welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm Stephenson, Worme, your host. And I should let you know tonight that I've got a co-host in Colin, Dowe. And before I introduce to you, of course, the rest of the cast panel, I just want to let you know that there's something of a Manjaloo connection here. Of course, Colin and I grew up in the village of Manjaloo, and I'm going to tell him something a little later on that he may not be aware of. He might be a bit surprised about that. But I also want to introduce you to the rest of our panelists here. We've got Superintendent Vannie Curwen, who of course is absolutely no stranger to the airways. And then we've got Mr. Damian Greaves, who is the professor of social sciences, and he's a very important man on our program here this evening. Well, we'll be looking at 2022 year in review. There are a number of salient subject matters that came up during the course of this year. We will have some clips that we'll be able to show to you. And we will also give you an opportunity to call in. And so we would, in fact, open up the lines a little bit earlier than usual, especially as we have about 6 subject matters that we need to review. Let me say to our gentlemen here, good evening and welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you, Stephenson.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Right. And maybe coming to the end of the program, we probably will ask our viewers to put a vote as to which one of the 4 is the most handsome. Interesting that.
I don't think
so. So, Colin, let me tell you quickly. The first job that I had in the public service, your mother was responsible for ensuring that I get that job. Were you aware of that?
I was aware, but I believe that, yes, but I believe what she would say is that you earned the job and she merely facilitated the process. But, you know, good evening to you, Stephenson, and certainly good evening to the viewers. I'm actually pleased to be here, and I'm very comfortable because, you know, you and I, Manjaloo.
Yes.
To my immediate left is my classmate Form 1 to Form 5.
Oh, really?
And my co-worker is to the extreme left. So I'm at home.
Yeah.
You know, I'm certainly at home within this environment and in friendly territory right around.
Right. And then GBN is at home too.
It always has been.
Absolutely.
Always has been.
So welcome. Just want to let the viewers know also that Colin is going to be hosting the program the early part of 2022. And this is in fact our last final program for the year, and we really hope that you enjoy it. Well, first up, we'll be looking at January 2022, and January 2022 started off with that second wave of COVID that really went on a rampage in Grenada, and we were in fact boasting of how well we had done. We had done tremendously well. We were rated very high worldwide, so to speak, and then we were subjected to quite a number of COVID cases. It was a very difficult time for Grenada as a whole, but there is the saying that Grenadians are resilient. We've heard that over and over, that we're resilient people. We fought hard and fought well. But let's just go back in review. I think we've got a clip that we need to take. So let's take the clip and then we'd have some discussion about it.
Chief Medical Officer Sean Charles says the health system has been under severe pressure due to the increase of COVID-19 cases. The latest health dashboard records Grenada's active COVID-19 cases at 2,551 with a positivity rate at 26.7%. The number have grown rapidly over the past few days.
Our team is under extreme pressure at present. One, the demand for testing is really, really high. All right. I know persons have the experience of going out to our health facilities, and they know that they have to wait some time. In addition, we have, in some instances, staff who become infected because what we have observed more commonly, a family member brings it home. So we have to isolate or we have to quarantine individuals, which results in a reduction in the number of persons available to actually do the work.
Despite the shortage of staff, 1,800 plus COVID-19 tests recently were conducted.
Our team has so far been able to, overcome the difficulties and still produce the numbers that you are seeing. All right, still produce. I mean, when you look at the number of tests that we're doing and you compare it to many other countries, it's incredible. And I am amazed how they're able to achieve this every day. And we thank them. All right, we thank them, and we hope that the public would be patient and will recognize the human service that they're putting in.
Some have been worried about the reintroduction of a curfew or restrictions on movement in light of the recent rapid increase in reported cases. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell was asked about this possibility during a news briefing today.
And if life is not in danger as it used to be, the question therefore is putting additional restriction and creating more trauma in the society psychologically. Does that worth it? That's the question that we have to answer. And my view is it doesn't worth it at this time. As I pointed out before, if we got into a situation like what we had when Delta occurred, and we start seeing more hospitalization, more deaths, then certainly it will call for some other actions that we have not been taking at this particular time.
Officials continue to urge persons to take advantage of vaccination testing facilities and to observe protocols put in place to keep people safe.
Okay, so as we did say, folk, that Colin, of course, is co-host, so he has the freedom to ask as well as I do. But let me ask you quickly, Superintendent Curwen, how challenging was it for the RGPF during this, well, let's say the first and second wave, but let's just concentrate on this second wave because that's the story. Was it a very difficult, challenging time for the RGP?
I think this was an unprecedented time in the history of the Royal Grenada Police Force. We have never had to deal with any national issue at that scale, that proportion. But what we have seen, COVID has brought out what I'll consider to be the strength of the leadership of the police force. And it really revealed the mettle that we really make out of. Because as Dr. Sean Charles has indicated, nurses got sick while they had to perform, and they were critical to the process. They were a critical component to the whole COVID situation, as well as the police force. And we have had a number of police officers who contracted COVID, but yet we had to deliver on the security challenges and the security issues that we were mandated to do. So while our numbers keep dwindling because people have to be home every 7 days and 14 days, we were still expected to deliver the quality of service that was expected of us in that difficult period of time. And so it was really challenging. I don't think there is any police officer who will tell you that it was easy for them. I have known police officers, who got really sick. Some stations were inundated, and yet we had to perform. So you can expect lengthy hours, double shift. And this is a time when, what we expected, the training that we received really was brought to bear during COVID period. It was really challenging. But I think it's fair to say that we've done an incredible job in keeping Grenada safe and managing the curfew and doing everything else that we were asked to do.
Stephenson, if I may, and I just would want to just bring in Dr. Greaves here. The audience may be aware, but Dr. Greaves does hold a Master of Public Health. So if he had got an MD, he actually can be our Chief Medical Officer. But just your response, Dr. Greaves, to Grenada's response to the crisis.
No, Grenada's response, we have to suggest that we have to actually accept the fact that Grenada did a brilliant job in the first instance. There were, when the second wave came around, there were some difficulties, and one has to look at that. So when we look at the response, we have to talk about the strength of the health workforce. And COVID-19 tested the strength of the health system. In fact, what it showed showed is that there were some deficiencies and weaknesses in the health system. And what we are talking about now globally is the strengthening of health systems. And Grenada, of course, has been looking at the strengthening of its health system. Because here's a situation where you had to focus your resources in terms of your health workforce, your financial resources, and all other kinds of resources on COVID-19, but you still had to deal at the same time with your chronic diseases, with your other infectious diseases. At that time, you remember the dengue reared its ugly head at the same time. And you also have to deal with climate change and all the confluence of events that were taking place at the time and that have escalated. So right now, we're talking about not just COVID-19, still very much lurking around the corner, but you have chronic diseases, which are severe. You have climate change issues, which have reared their ugly head. You have you have the supply chain situation. You have the war. You have a whole confluence of events that are really testing the mettle of Grenada, testing our health system, testing the Royal Grenada Police Force and all the other entities that we are looking at. So a good job had been done, but there was the fact is that the system did not break. The system became brittle, but it did not necessarily break. And that is something that we have to applaud, because if it had broken, there would have been mayhem. But what caused it not to break was the leadership at the time. There was definitely, definitely have to talk about the leadership at the time in terms of how things were put in place. You have to talk about the health workforce. You have to talk about what we call the ancillary services, the Royal Grenada Police Force and all the other services that came together, the committees that came together, and Grenada was about the only country that did not have what you call a specific COVID team. What I understood happened was that there was a cabinet subcommittee, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and all of the entities, tourism, etc., all of those various entities, including the private sector, reported to that cabinet subcommittee, and decisions were taken. In St. Lucia, for example, you had a special committee, and you had a special what you call COVID-19 czar, who took care, in which a lot of the decisions and the advice would have resided at the time. So we have to applaud the system, but what is very important is that we were also able to see the deficiencies, the soft underbelly in terms of the financing arrangements, the organization, and some of the issues related to the health workforce.
And do you think that the showing of these deficiencies, of course, that popped up, we were able to see them, you think that that should help our health sector and our health official to put things in place so that in the event we have another pandemic, we should be able to handle it quite effectively?
It has to, because as we speak, Grenada is actually going through a health system strengthening. The focus is on health system strengthening with a number of entities like the Caribbean Development Bank, the World Bank, PAHO, WHO, PAHO being a subsidiary of the World Health Organization, looking at health system strengthening from what I call the building blocks of health. And the building blocks of health would be your health workforce. It would be your finance. It would be all of those inputs that go in there in terms of your medicines and all of those things. It would be the organization of the health system. It would be all of those issues that would help to strengthen the health systems. Because what the two buzzwords, what you call resilience and agility. We just watch a football match with Messi and Mbappe and all of these great players. What was good about them? They were resilient. Even there were about 5 defenders, they were able to weave their way through on most occasions and still be able to pass the ball. So if you can have 5 defenders hitting at you and still stand and do what you have to do, you are agile. That is skill. But you also want to be resilient from the point of view that while the crisis is on, you can still offer the services that are required. And that's what we have to do now. build the resilience and the agility of the health system so that in the event that there is another pandemic, and there will be another pandemic, how many years from now we do not know, the health system must be able to stand on its own and be able to deliver the other parts of the services that ought to be delivered while dealing with the crisis at hand. And that is resilience and agility.
Let me just bring Superintendent back in. And you mentioned leadership, and I actually 100% agree, because leadership matters. And leadership within the healthcare system, leadership within the Royal Grenada Police Force was important in getting us through this. What are some of the lessons you would say that were learned and the takeaways as you had to manage this crisis?
But because we've never experienced anything like that before, you can plan for all sort of eventualities. There's some eventualities you don't plan for, and when they hit you, you now have to, you learn the lesson there and then, revisit your operational posturing and redesign your approach. And so during COVID, we have had to do that. We've never had, a pandemic like that before, and so we did not know how to prepare for a pandemic like that before. But as the crisis unfolded, we found creative ways to respond to it, at a strategic level, that we filtered it down to our stations, our branches, and our very men and women on the street. We created some metrics as to how we can track our people that become, infected. And those metrics came up to headquarters every week. So we were tracking our infections, while at the same time we were tracking our responses to the situation and how well we are doing. So there was so many things that were first time for us. And so we learned a lot. Should there be a next pandemic, as Dr. Greaves said, tomorrow, next week, next year, I think we'll be better positioned to be able to hit the road running from day one. Because we've learned all of the lessons we believe we could have learned from this pandemic. Created some structures, built some operational posturing, created some matrices so that we can be informed of what's happening within the RGPF and outside of it. So I think we are well poised. Lesson learned, and we just hope now that we can transfer that to the next generation by the time the next pandemic comes.
Okay. Well, let me just do
if I may chime in on that too, strategic foresight is always important. A lot of our governments did not engage in the Caribbean and in parts of the world did not engage in that strategic foresight. Lessons were learned, and they will be turned to the positive. Lessons of not operating in silos, that the Royal Grenada Police Force is on its own, Ministry of Tourism is on its own, Ministry of Infrastructure is on its own. What did you see COVID-19 do? It brought about a situation where there had to be what you call an integration of purpose as well as an integration of action, in terms of people putting their heads together, because not everybody is blessed with what is to be done. And what I hope it taught us is that when you integrate ideas and you integrate in terms of purpose, that you're not losing something. That the manager in your entity, or the supervisor in your entity and the supervisor in another entity, when they come to the table to do something for the benefit of the country, you're not losing something, you're adding value. Yeah. That's the important point.
That's an interesting point that Dr. Greaves has made.
Okay, so we'll stick a pin on that one because we need to take a quick break, and we'll pursue that after. So we're going to take a quick break, and we want to alert viewers, please, that we'll open up the line rather early, so that as the subject matter is discussed, you can give us a call. Just to remind you, it's 440-1252. We'll be right back.
We all have wishes at Christmas. Maybe it's a car, repairs to your home, new appliances, or travel. Get yourself that perfect gift with a GUT Credit Union Christmas Make-A-Wish loan. You can get the money you need to make that holiday wish come true. Apply for a loan and you'll be entered to win one of 5 shopping sprees at Foodland Supermarket. Plus, great prizes from Sol AC Limited, Dean Mattresses, Digicel Grenada Limited, and Beacon Insurance. Call 440-1354. Email loans@gutcu.com or visit go.gutcu.com/Christmas. Apply now and make your wish the perfect gift this Christmas. Special conditions apply.
Sweet tips for people living with diabetes this holiday season. Add spices like cinnamon or ginger to enhance the flavor of sorrel. It doesn't have to be extra sweet. Have a limited amount of cake or ice cream as part of your meal. For example, if your meal has 3 grains of green banana, replace 1 grain of banana with a small slice of cake. Don't skip meals and keep your portion sizes in mind. Flavor desserts with local spices and natural sugar-free sweeteners. Enjoy the natural sugars in fruits when making punches or drinks instead of using condensed milk or sugar. You don't have to be perfect at every meal. Just be cautious of your choices. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council.
Looking for expert in sounds, stage and lighting engineering? Double D Sound, sound reinforcement and public address system, rentals for concerts, weddings, meetings, conferences, live shows, parties and the crusades. Double D Sound. We also sell all types of musical instruments, accessories and replacement parts. You looking for intercommunication and programmable bell systems, especially for schools? Double D Sound. Looking for amplifiers, speakers, keyboards, matching drums, wind and percussion instruments, transistors and more. We rent stages of any size, concert stage, lighting, party, tents, tables, and chairs. Call Double D Sound, 405-9685. Hearing and feeling the difference. Double D Sound.
Gittins Healthcare Pharmacies have catered for all the early shoppers. So, start your Christmas shopping now and avoid the rush. Visit Gittins Healthcare Pharmacies for your gift sets, toys for the children, hair care and body care products, along with your prescription and over-the-counter medication. Shop early and avoid the Christmas rush at Gittins Healthcare Pharmacies. Central Depredin Street, Goab, the corner of Victoria and Jubilee Street, Grenville, and Wall Street, Grandans.
Shop and win at Real Value this Christmas. Anyone spending $50 or more can win $5,000, $2,500, and $1,500 in cash and shopping vouchers. Simply place your receipt with your name, address, and phone number in the barrel provided. Promotion starts November 21st and runs until December 23rd with the grand draw of the morning of December 24th. Plus, anytime you use your Real Value Shoppers card, you can win day passes to Royalton, hamper baskets, wine, and more. Promotion runs from November 21st till December 30th. Shop at Real Value this Christmas.
Do you know you can lower your electricity bill by changing the way you do laundry? Front-loader washing machines are designed to reduce electricity and water consumption. When upgrading, buy with this in mind. You can also lower your electricity bill by doing full loads of laundry, using the sunlight to dry your clothes, and ironing in bulk. As an individual consumer, I cannot impact global fuel prices. However, I can ease the burden of rising fuel rates by changing the way I do laundry. What can you do?
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Spare your pocket, spare the earth, always.
Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
And welcome back. We're reviewing 2022. And Colin, just before the break, you were about to ask our panelists or make comments. So you shoot.
It just was interesting. Dr. Greaves mentioned resilience and agility, and it worried me as we responded. You know, if we are to be faced with a similar challenge, what do we do? And whether part of this strategic forecasting now will deal with our human resources. Here we had a healthcare system that was stretched. The demand was even greater. Yeah. The numbers are probably inadequate in normal times, and we had people getting ill, meaning members of the healthcare providers staff. Same thing with the RGPF. And how do you envision responding if a similar challenge is to come up? What type of redundancies have you thought of when you are challenged by way of the numbers? I don't know whether the numbers in the Royal Grenada Police Force is adequate as we speak, or whether you need to go on a recruitment drive in order for us to adequately manage our current circumstances, and certainly when we're challenged in the future, we're able to respond.
If I should take the RGPF side first, as you talk about the adequacy of the staff and recruitment drive. In fact, COVID has taught us a significant lesson, and currently we're on a recruitment drive. We've just had 2 batches just taken in because we were depleted so heavily prior to COVID. And during the COVID crisis, quite a lot of our officers found themselves trapped overseas and couldn't get back home. So you have some officers who were overseas and couldn't get back home because of all of the restrictions. They themselves were sick. And then we had a number of officers here who themselves became ill, and that depleted the strength of the staff significantly. But not only that, we realized that with those constraints that we had, and that's part of the challenges in the first question that you've asked. That's one of the challenges that we have seen. Having to do what we were asked to do with a reduced number, but yet we got it done because I indicated that we had to double up. In cases where we had to do 8 hours, we have found ourselves doing 12 and 14 and 16. Now, a lot of members of the public don't understand what we did and how we were able to achieve what we achieved during COVID, but it was a significant sacrifice from the RGPF coming out of the COVID crisis. And because of the fact that we have lost so many officers, some through death, some through migration after that, and we were already heavily depleted, we found ourselves having to go on a recruitment drive now. So we have just taken in 2 batches of 30 each, and because our establishment was low at the time of COVID, we did not have a required strength, but yet we were able to survive. So what Commissioner has decided to do now is to get the strength back to where we need it. In addition to that, we have just approached government for an expansion of the strength so that we can probably get 150 officers more, and all that's part of the strategic thinking looking ahead, because we don't know when another crisis is going to hit. It may not be COVID, it may not be a pandemic, it may be an earthquake, it may be a hurricane, and so we don't want to be caught off guard, if I should say that, as we have been during COVID. And so we are strengthening the ranks and file of the RGPF and getting our numbers back so that should something like that happen again, we'll be better positioned to be able to deliver the quality service that we did on the Ivan. I say on the Ivan, but under the pandemic, during the pandemic.
Let me just ask quickly, I don't know, per capita, let's say Grenada 110,000, 105,000, what really should the range of, numerically, the force should look like? How much per capita?
Well, our current strength should be 1,013. That is the established strength of the force. We were down by that number quite a lot during Ivan. We found ourselves being down by, I think it's 75 or thereabouts, subject to correction. And because of the numbers we are down by, we're now trying to get back to where we need to be. And so we were shot by 75 recently. We have just taken, I think it's 60. So we do have a 15 number to field. And in addition to that, as I indicated, we have approached government to extend the establishment so that we can go beyond 1013, by 150. That should give us operational capacity to withstand, deliver on anything that hits us coming in the future, going forward.
Just one follow-up. There's one thing adding numbers. Is there a strategic plan to add skills? And I refer to that for the RGPF, and I certainly would like Dr. Greaves to respond to this. Let's say in terms of our healthcare workers, community health nursing, for example, is something that is absent, and in a crisis, they would have been a key skill set that we could have leveraged.
Yeah, skill set is very important. There is one thing to have numbers, but having numbers with a requisite skill set does not deliver on the challenges that you face. You have to be qualified. You have to have the technology to be able to withstand some of what we're currently seeing. And not only talking about the pandemic, talking about crimes in general. It cannot be business as usual. It has to be intelligence-driven policing rather than just policemen and women on the street or in the station. You know, we don't police today as we policed 10, 15, 20 years ago. The technology have to be important. You can sit in a room and do a lot more than what 20 persons can do outside. One person can do that in a room. Two persons can do that in a room. The use of CCTV and those sort of monitoring are critically important now, compared to 2 years ago. So yes, the skill set is being developed. In fact, I just came from Barbados, and that's part of what I went to do with the US, looking at training in different areas, how we can better add skill set to what we currently have to ensure that we deliver a service that is comparison to none in the region. I know every island in the region want to do that, but I think we are at the cutting edge of that. They may have more technology than us, but we're able to keep our crimes lower than almost everybody else in the Caribbean. It means that we are doing something with the little resources that we have, and now we want to build on these resources, build on this technology so that we can do much more. So when we're talking about crime, safety, and security in the future, we want to be at an enviable position more than we are now.
Final thoughts, Dr. Greaves, as we go to another subject.
Definitely the skill set. One of the shortages during COVID-19 was critical care nursing. And that is so important. But when we talk about the skill set and all of those things, I can go into a whole set of things about some of the services missing and so on, and of course it's being looked at now. Digitization, that is important. For the RGPF, for all of what we are doing now, the public service, we need to go into the digital style of things. For example, in terms of health, telemedicine. Telemedicine will be very important if there is to be a hurricane or a pandemic in the future. You need to be able to look at that. But very importantly as well, customer relations, how you deal with the public. Every single individual brought on board, whether it's the RGPF or the Ministry of Health or the public service, there has to be some kind of training in customer care, how we deal with the public. Because the public is under pressure, there's a certain expectation. We have to be able to build that kind of skill among our people in terms of how they treat with people who come to seek a service. That is going to be critical as well.
This is Beyond the Headlines, Year in Review 2022. We have several other areas that we've got to look at tonight, and we're going to the subject matter of Curwen Bell. And remember, in April 2022, this year, a little early on this year, he lost his life when the Grenada Coast Guard collided with a boat that he was an occupant in. And it was a very sad story, rather touching story, and there was obviously controversy involved. We saw protests, in fact, very strong protests. I was a bit surprised that the protest was so strong, but people came out to express themselves and, of course, to sympathize also with the family of the late Curwen Bell. So let's look at that story. We'll take a clip in and then we'll have some comments about that.
Social media lit up on Monday morning as many awoke to the news of a young man missing at sea, while another was hospitalized after a run-in with Coast Guard officers on Sunday night. A video made the rounds on social media with the friend of the missing man, who was with him at the time of the incident, crying as he recounted what happened while they were out at sea.
Let me do get an engine fix now. We running coming down from the airport come down there. So now we shooting by the Grenada beach. We see Coast Guard coming. You know, so I turn on and tell him, I'm gonna put on the phone light, take Bell waterproof phone now and turn on the phone light and sit wait for the Coast Guard because the running coming straight to me. You know what I mean? At the same time now, I see the Coast Guard coming, I make a heave. As I see the Coast Guard reach about 15 to 10 feet away. The boat on top of Bell. I end up under the water, dog. That is what gone there, dog. And then man kill Bell, dog. And men said they don't see no light, and we waving the light for them, and we wasn't even going on speed. We taking with time.
The deceased was identified as 22-year-old Kimon Bell of Worme, St. George.
The Royal Grenada Police Force is presently trying to calm down protesters who are seeking justice for the late Kimon Bells, the young man who lost his life over the weekend in a boating incident with Coast Guard. In the early stage of the protests, members of the Royal Grenada Police Force refused the protesters' entry to the ministerial complex, restricting them to the front of the Botanical Gardens. As the crowd rapidly grew, protesters felt that their plight was not being heard and took their chants and placards to the streets. In the midst of this, the mother and father of 22-year-old Kimon Bell spoke to GBN, expressing their grievance surrounding the death of their son.
The police are responsible for killing my son, had to be brought to justice. They had to be arrested and charged, and I wouldn't stop until I get justice. That's all I need, is justice. Because when police investigating police in Grenada, they never ever come up with nothing positive for the family. They always covering up. So calling on the authority, the Governor General and Dr. Kit Mitchell, please, I need justice.
I am looking for justice for my son, and I want the person that murdered my child and the 3 men on the Coast Guard base, they're supposed to be not on duty and they're on duty.
Yeah, we did learn, in fact, that Kimberly, that's the mother of the deceased, did in fact pass on the 7th of December. And so that's obviously another touching story. Dr. Greaves, were you surprised the sort of energy, the aggression may not be the correct word, but people came out expressing their disgust. Were you surprised about it?
I wasn't surprised at all, because in moments like that, the emotions, of course, will flare. And you could understand people wanting answers, and the Royal Grenada Police Force could not provide the answers at the time, because obviously they had to have the investigation. And in moments like these, therefore, there needs to be some kind of way in which we can speak to people and give them some kind of assurance. But even within that situation of trying to give them the assurance and so on, we know that tempers will flare, emotions would flare, and it is quite unfortunate. So I am not at all surprised by what happened. It was almost a spontaneous outburst, a spontaneous reaction to something that certainly hurt people and certainly caused them some distress and some stress.
Let me just ask Superintendent here, one of the comments made by the father was the suspicion, and I guess we probably can understand that, when the Royal Grenada Police Force is asked to investigate officers within the Royal Grenada Police Force, and sometimes the wheels of justice is slow. What is the system that is in place for when these types of allegations, or not allegations, but allegations, accusations, incidents occur within the force, for an investigation that the public can take comfort that it is going to be handled in a transparent way and in a way that will be fair to all concerned?
Well, in that particular light, our community relations department is always open. That is the avenue between the police force and the public, and we never shy away from engaging any person in any matter that we are investigating. We've heard the concern that the police are investigating the police. This is a system that we currently have. Until a better system comes in place put in by the executive, then that's what we have. But I want to give the assurance to the public, and we have done that in the past. There are number of matters where police officers were investigated by the same police officers, went to court, found guilty, where police officers who are serving sentences in court now by matters we investigated. We have police officers who've lost their job or dismissed by the Commissioner of Police by matters we have investigated. But the check and balance to the system, I understand the mistrust of police investigating police, because we are the investigative arm of the country, but we do not make the judicial decision. So the checks and balance comes with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. We gathered evidence,
and we submit all of what we gather to the DPP's office, and he directs the evidence. So if we were to leave any information out, he reserves the right to say, you need to find me A, B, and C. We gathered everything that is impossible, and we don't sift any information. We present everything to him. He take a look at it, he do his own analysis, and he makes a decision. And if he say arrest, that's what we do. If he say that there needs to be a coroner's inquest, that's what we do. We've had a lot of matters that we investigated recently. Most of those matters gone to the coroner's court for coroner's inquiry, meaning that the standard of evidence did not reach up to intention to do what was done. And so a coroner's inquest will determine. In this Kim and Bell matter, that matter is currently before the court. So, I mean, I wouldn't speak deeply into the evidential issue of it, but to say it was investigated. We were open to the public and to the family to come in and have discourse and dialogue. But I understand the anger because you've lost a loved one, and you can't get information fast enough. And so that is understood, by not only the Bell family, but, Grenadans on a whole. But when those matters go to the DPP, he decides what happens. So this matter is currently undergoing a coroner's inquest. I know for a fact it has started. I've sat in the court and listened to some of the evidence. At the end of the day, a jury will determine whether or not members of the police force is going to be held accountable for this. Not the police determining that. A jury of our peers will determine whether or not there was any culpability on the part of the police force, and whatever decision that comes back is what we're going to stand by. So yes, I understand the mistrust, but I think we have no system is foolproof. But the checks and balance by the DPP office brings a lot of credibility to the process that takes away a lot of the suspicion that the police force are investigating their own, and by some magical way are sweeping information or evidence under the rug and it's not coming to light. That's not our decision.
If I'm just to do a follow-up, if one of the challenges, and in your estimation, one of the challenges that is faced and the grievances that the public seem to have is whenever there seems to be, and Oscar Bartholomew probably comes to mind, when there might be sufficient evidence to say there is guilt, police officers travel. And you look around and the police officers are no longer within the jurisdiction in order for that process to continue. Whether it is that they have an unfair advantage, etc., I don't know. But do you believe that is one of the issues that brought about the type of raw emotions that we saw on the streets?
Well, okay, just now, Superintendent, we've got a call on the line, so let's take this call. We don't want to keep the caller waiting for too long, and we'll ask you to respond thereafter. Yeah, good evening, caller. Caller, good evening.
All right, good night. Stephenson, Worme. Are you getting a feedback from me?
Go ahead. We'll alert you.
All right. One question. Well, a few questions I want to ask. That happened with the death in the day or in the night?
Oh, it was in the night time. Am I right, Superintendent?
Or was in the night time?
Yes.
Well, that is an accident. And when you're traveling in the night, you have to be safe. Have a lot of light and try to keep away from the oncoming vehicle. So in a case like that, I think there might be, like what I heard the guy say, that the police is responsible for his son. I mean, when there's an accident, you cannot be charged. And the reason why I'm calling you to tell you that, because you have a man attacking me every day on the water for nothing, right? And I take the man to court. The man wants to drown me. My boat cannot sink because my boat is unsinkable. But I have to wear life jacket. And the man was attacking me for 49 years, long before he was born.
Well,
right? So then,
caller, that's what the law is there for. So don't take it into your hands, but you need to report the matter, and I'm sure that the law will come to your help.
Yeah, the matter is in court. The man wants to drown me on his water, but what happened over the weekend? There is an accident. But this man, he was attacking me over for 49 years, 50 years now, going for 50 years, and he don't want to stop, so I put the matter in the court, let the court deal with him, because I have to save my life.
Right, so you've done the right thing. It's in the hands of the law, and the law is going to really justify you in the process. So you did the right thing. Don't take it into your own hands. Please don't do that. I know that sometimes the temptation is great to react, but don't do that. You've done the right thing, and applause and kudos to you. Thanks a lot.
All right, okay, but don't let me go yet.
Make it short.
Yeah, but with this cricket business right now, I cannot hear you on the commentary box again. I mean, with the technology. So, but you tell me already you don't retire, you know. So anyway, we'll talk for the new year. So have a happy new year.
Thank you very much. Yes, okay, cool. All the best. Yeah. So
to come back to the question that Colin asked, I don't think there is a disproportionate number of police officers that skip country in comparison to the rest of the population. I am not going to deny that don't happen, but it don't only happen with police officers. If you have committed a crime and placed on bail, there are some times when there are conditions attached to bail, but you're basically out there. There's nothing preventing you from leaving if you want to. There are consequences and repercussions for it, but if you're on bail, you're out there. And not only police officers, we have had cases where people are charged for drug offenses. When we're ready for trial, they're not here. People are charged for other offenses. When we're ready for trial, they're not here. So I guess police officers fall into the the ambit of that happening. But I don't think it's disproportionately so that police officers are going or leaving the island more than any other persons in community. But it does happen, and we don't have any control over this. A police officer is charged for whatever crime. He's placed on bail and he's outside. His passport might be a condition to bail, but we don't know how porous our borders are. And if you want to leave, whether or not we have your passport or not, if you're desperate to leave, you're going to leave. And we have seen that with particularly in drug cases where we have all of people's traveling documents, but we still can't find them for trial. So it's not unique to police. It's just something that happens in our society, and yes, it happened with police officers as well.
Did you have any amicable moments with the family?
Personally, I did not, but I know that our community relations department would have done that. When I was in charge of community relations, that's one of the things that we would do. Once there is an incident involving the police, whether it's a shooting, the debtors in Cayman, we always reach out, and we try to do so as early as is possible. We don't make much promises, but we empathize, but we always let them know that there's going to be an investigation that's going to be thorough, it's going to be comprehensive, and at the end of the day, we give them the comfort. Don't be fearful that we'll make a decision to sweep under the rug. The Director of Public Prosecution will have the last say as to what happens with any investigations that we do.
Okay, we've got a call on the line. Caller, good evening. Thanks for holding.
Yes, first of all, good evening, and good evening to your panel.
Yes.
The last caller intimated that blanket, it was an accident. Now we have to take into consideration the Coast Guard is out on parole, they're on duty. And if they are late and they see another boat in dock, the first thing they're going to come to their mind is something to be suspected. So they don't know what they're seeing maybe. They don't know what to expect. They have their own self to defend.
Please lower your volume on your TV or whatever other device you're listening to.
I'm not near the TV anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, they will have their own suspicions, and I believe they acted in a sort of self-defense manner, disable whoever they are, and then we check on them. Because you don't know what you're facing. You don't know these people with guns, you don't know people with drugs, you don't know who. So I don't believe it's an accident. I believe it was a defense mechanism, something they did to defend themselves, first of all, before they approach whatever craft it was. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's been taken care of in the court, so we await that final ruling. But just before we leave that subject, Superintendent Curwen, what are the requirements? You're sailing at night, you're on a boat at night. Are there some requirements that the RGPF or the Coast Guard, for example, need you to follow?
There are certain protocols as it relates to, marine movements. I must admit, I am not au fait with all of it. Okay. But what we have done as a result of this Cayman Bell incident is to revisit our protocols, revisit our own standard operating procedure. Right. Because when these things happened, it's not just about 3 or 4 police officers getting charged or being responsible. We want to make sure that we comply with all of the marine rules that are, that are put in place. So we have revisited our protocols in terms of how the Coast Guard operate, what standard operating procedures that we need to review, So we have done that as a result of that, because we did not only have the Cayman Bell incident. We had another incident where there was a collision between the Coast Guard and another vessel. I think that was sometime after the Cayman Bell incident. And that forces us to do some introspection, look at what we do, look at our protocols, look at our standard operating procedures. Are we operating on the sea as we are expected to? Are there any rules, regulations, policies that we need to strengthen, tighten, update? And so we have done that. Yeah, we have done that. So these incidents, though tragic they are, the lessons that we have learned, and best practices is what we are working towards adopting, see whether or not we have failed in any way. And so it's a work in progress that we continue to build, continue to expand. As we talked about training a while ago, the force continue to develop. And incidents like that, though hurts us a lot knowing that someone has lost their lives, gives us an opportunity to be able to have better procedures, better protocols, better operation, posturing. And that's what we have done and continue to do. Not only with this incident, with every incident we have. Whenever there is a shooting, we look at what we have done wrong, what we could have done better. Did we follow protocol? And if there is anything that we violated, we omitted, where there needs to be retraining, that is considered.
Okay, we've got another caller on the line. Caller, good evening. Thanks for holding. Go right ahead.
Yes, good evening.
Yes.
Yes. There's a province in Canada, the COVID, they had 17, the population is similar to Grenada, around 100,000. And they had 17 deaths. And Grenada had over 200 deaths. So I am trying to figure out statistically, putting things in perspective, how well we did. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Dr. Greaves, you want to handle that?
Yes, so we had discussed that before, and we said that you want to make a comparison between a province in Canada and of course, Grenada. And we know that it's almost like chalk and cheese in terms of what we may have and the advancement and the advances that Canada would have made and the province in Canada would have made. And as we are saying, in the circumstances, when we look at our circumstances and we make comparisons, we did fairly well in terms of how we had handled the situation for a country that does not produce medicines, that had to depend on other countries to get vaccines and so on, for a country that had to deal with all kinds of situations, including fighting the social media in terms of the disinformation and the misinformation. I thought that we handled that well, because that was part of our difficulty. Part of our difficulty was trying to struggle against information out there, the proliferation of information out there in terms of not using the vaccine and not doing this and not doing that. And we know social media was raging, as well as the corporate media, not just social media, but corporate media was also raging with information. I do not know if we can make a fair comparison in that way in terms of our resource-strapped country as part of the Caribbean. And I think in the circumstances, yes, we could have done better if we had put certain things in place. But in the circumstances, I thought that we handled the situation in a particular way.
If I just may, I'm in the business of educating. Yeah. So province would be an inappropriate term. There are 9 provinces in Canada, and they each will have millions of people. Absolutely. So the 100,000 comparison could be a village or a town, certainly not a province. And then the question is, we can ask, how did that province do? How did Canada do? compared to Grenada. And I would maintain that we did extremely well. Are there isolated pockets that are village that may not have had the type of interactions with other places in Canada, and they may have had a low incidence in terms of mortality rate, etc.? That's possible. But in the overall scheme of things, I think we agreed, and I do maintain that Grenada did extremely well, and Canada struggled. In terms of the overall management, no, I'm talking Canada, the country. They struggled. They went through some dark times. For those of us with family in the province of Ontario, for example, and the lockdowns and restrictions in Toronto, where we have 45,000 or thereabouts, Grenadian and Grenadian descent in the individuals. We know that they struggle themselves. I think we need to give kudos to the work that was done in Grenada and the leadership provided in the healthcare sector, in the security sector, that kept us safe.
Absolutely.
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
So, May was a big month, really big month. That's when the former Prime Minister Keith Mitchell called a snap election, and the date carded for it, June 23rd. Sent the country into a bit of excitement, and the momentum, the political momentum just skyrocketed. And so many things were happening. There were pocket meetings all over the place. There were massive rallies, just getting ready, just 1 month, and then there'll be general election. Dr. Greaves, were you surprised that Dr. Mitchell called that election for June the 23rd?
No, I wasn't surprised at all. And you said it was a snap election. I'm not sure it was a snap election, because people were peddling information about this all over the place and saying he will call it this time, he'll call it this time. And there was a lot of speculation, and I love the speculation. Grenadians are very, very politically savvy. This is a nation that is so politically savvy, it isn't funny. So I wasn't surprised at all, because you were getting hints. It's in my pocket. I have the answer in my pocket. And there were all kinds of things going on, that gave you the impression that this election is going to be called pretty soon. And even the opposition at the time, the NDC party at the time, would have had an indication as to what would have been happening around that time. So I do not know if it was as snapped as Barbados' election under Mayor Motley, as snapped as the recently concluded Dominica election. I do not know if it was as snapped as that. I do not know if it was as snapped as the election in St. Kitts Nevis. Right? Okay. So I think people were well aware of what was going on. People were basically hinting. I heard people say that the election would be either the end of May or in June, and people said it will not go beyond that.
Okay.
How did they know that?
So let's take a clip here, and we'll have more discussions about that.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell has already rang the bell as he announced the date for the next general election at the Telescope playing field last Saturday night.
On June, Thursday, the 23rd of June, we're ready to vote, sisters and brothers. We're ready to vote Thursday, June 23rd. So you know what that means? What that means, if you do the right thing, we fet in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sisters and brothers.
His announcement led to loud cheers.
I love every single one of you all. Thank you all.
It is election morning at the South St. George Government School, and the polling stations are open, and already a large turnout can be seen.
Watch your finger. It was so easy because I was the second person to vote. So I love myself. I just feel free. Yeah? Right. So I just do what I gotta do.
Just tell us how long you've been waiting to for the line to vote?
Well, not too long, and the process wasn't too bad. The process was a kind of speedy trial, as early as possible. More early is more quicker getting done.
There
There was jubilation throughout the Tri-Island as the results from the Parliamentary Elections Office were released Thursday night. And at the end of the night, it was the National Democratic Congress that led the charge, toppling long-standing Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell and the new National Party, 9 seats to 6. In what is considered a historic feat, the younger Mitchell, a newcomer to politics, led the NDC to victory 8 months after taking over the leadership of the party. The victorious NDC candidates are Deacon Mitchell, St. David, Andy Williams, South St. George, Ron Redhead, St. George Northeast, Tevin Andrew, Carrier Curwen Petit Martinique, Lennox Andrew, St. Andrew Southwest, Kieran James, St. John, Joseph Andel, St. Patrick West, Dennis Cornwell, St. Patrick East, and Philip Telesford, St. George Southeast. Grenada's ninth Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell was sworn in at 2 p.m. on Friday during an official ceremony at the Grenada Trade Center. In the company of friends, family, associates, and members of the National Democratic Congress, Governor General Dame Cecilia Grenada administered the oath of office and presented the new Prime Minister with his instruments of appointment.
I, Deacon Amos Thomas Mitchell, do swear that I will bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
Right. Well, what a series of events, really. There was so much anticipation and so much in the atmosphere at the time. There were people who were convinced that the NMP would win, and there were others who felt that this new breed of young politicians will come and dethrone the incumbent. Did you get a sense, Dr. Greaves, that Dr. Mitchell was intimidated? Did you get this impression that he was very confident? Or did you think he really felt, look, I think I'm seeing something here that I'm not very comfortable? How did you read it?
I think Dr. Mitchell was absolutely confident because he was being advised by certain people, I suspect. I believe he was very confident, and the party was very confident that it would have won the election. I believe he understood, however, that there were certain things happening, certain situations happening around him. So he was aware of those situations happening around him. And I believe that he thought that it would not be a 15-0 victory like what prevailed, like what happened before, but he thought he had it in the bag. He absolutely thought he had it in the bag. The party absolutely thought that it had the election in the bag. The party did not think that the NDC could prevail with young Deacon Mitchell, although they saw signs that there were people who were rallying around the party. So I think there was a miscalculation of sorts. There must have been a misadvising of sorts as well. And I think basically what it ended up being was that there was a bit of overconfidence, and that, listen, we are going to win this election. We might lose a few seats, but we are going to win this election, and we are going through. We'll be sailing through. I do not think that there was an anticipation that the election would have been lost, and that's unfortunate because as I said to people, the NDC seems to have at the time seized the momentum and basically, quote-unquote, calling the shots. I thought that the NNP party was responding to what the NDC was doing, having seized the momentum and basically setting the tone of the campaign. And I thought in the spirit of setting the tone of the campaign and seizing the momentum that there would have been going back to the drawing board and analyzing what was taking place. And then when you look at social media, when the campaigns were going on and the rallies were going on, and you check out social media, the NDC always had more individuals following the campaign and making positive comments on the campaign. And you saw as the campaign continued that the NDC seems to have been gaining more and more momentum and more people attending the rallies, particularly that last rally at Lassages.
All right. We're going to have you on pause a little because we've got a caller who's waiting. Caller, good evening. Go right ahead.
Good evening.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah. That election was lost on the 31st of October 2021. From the 1st of November, the Prime Minister started going like a headless chicken. So let me don't forget that from the 1st of November 2021, the Prime Minister started doing all kind of things what you never thought he was doing. So he didn't only start and stop. Started on the 31st. Once he was able to nominate Dickon Mitchell, and he came and everybody get to know that, the Prime Minister started getting like a headless chicken. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But this was unprecedented. Yeah. If we look at our history, of course, we had Eric Gary, who came on the scene about 1951, and he made his mark, impressive mark, I dare say. He was like the people's champion, so to speak. And many years later on, we had Maurice Bishop, who also became like the people's champion. But don't forget, Maurice also had some exposure to politics. He did participate in the 1976 elections and won his seat. But we had never had anything where somebody came out from obscurity, from nowhere, no former participation in politics, and just seemed to have risen out of the sea, metaphorically, and just seemed to stamp his impression and just got the attention of everyone. We'll talk a little bit about that when we come back. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yeah, good night, Pastor Woman, to your esteemed guest.
Yes, go ahead.
I think one of the things for this year is that Grenada came to the senses and did the right thing. In fact, as I listened to a clip you played where the former Prime Minister talking about FET from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and not to show Monday, what kind of leader that is? And should we have continued with a kind of leader that only could keep the people together, keep his supporters by petting? So I think that it was good, and he miscalculated. Also, Pastor Worme, if you remember, Mr. Justine Payne on your program said that one of the things that they tried to tell the NMP folks is that they were giving them the information that things was turning against them, and they ignore it. Still with that, false confidence. So I think I want to again thank the people of Grenada for liberating Grenada from this whatever, and thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, caller. I appreciate your call. Yeah, gentlemen.
Yeah, I think, we saw, there was a new energy that came about. Moving from 0 to 100 in fast pace was unprecedented. And November, elected political leader, and by June, the Prime Minister. That's definitely unprecedented because there's no political history. But it also speaks to a yearning that Grenada and Grenadians had for a new face, a new type of conversation and discourse. And that is what manifested. Whether or not there was a pathway to 8, and whether we could have read the tea leaves and say, NDC had a pathway to 8, I don't know that many of us did. Certainly in terms of a month out. By the time it got down to a week out, we realized that there was a pathway to 8, and as it turned out, it was 9. All right, but far out, I don't believe that anyone who has been following local politics could have said there would have been a pathway to 8, including members of the NDC if they're being honest with themselves. As it got closer, yes. But as we saw in the momentum of the campaign, and still translated now that we've got to the budgetary parliamentary debates of the last 2 weeks, there is renewed interest. There is a different level of conversation and discourse taking place, which is critically important. What I'd also like to signal, and I believe it's important for Grenada, is that there was a missing generation in local politics. All of the top players or major players prior to this new injection within the NDC were from the 1970s. Dr. Mitchell's first run was in 1972, I believe it was. And here he was in 2022, still a leading and dominant politician. And you look at other members of his party, and so many of the influencers were from the 70s. And it definitely is refreshing to see the 40-something-year-old, the couple of low 50s, and then down to age 23, getting involved in local politics. Because if we are to reflect, when Sir Eric Matthew Gary made his mark in 51, he was a young man. When Morris Bishop died at 38, 39, so we have always had young people making significant impressions and contributions to our political landscape. And this, I think, is a rejuvenation for Grenada in that standpoint, in that we have youngsters now, and I'm hopeful in both sides, and there is now a renewed interest in Grenada's politics for Grenada's benefit.
Okay, we've got a call on the line. Caller, good evening. Thanks for holding.
Yes, sir. I am sorry to have to come back, but I must. And before I go ahead, I want to say good night to Dr. Greaves, my former lecturer. Anyway, as pertaining to the surprise that Dr. Keith Claudius Mitchell got on the 23rd, it was not handed, that surprise was not handed to him merely by the voters. God ordained that shift. It was time for him to move. God couldn't take more of what he was getting on with. So God rescued Grenada from the precipice where it was headed to, and God saved us. So yes, God used the people, but it is God, and we better don't lose sight. It was God that did it, because many came on. Every new leader the NDC seem to have come with, before you know they get sick and they can't vote thing, Miss Franca Bonadine, Mr. Antoine, and they just get sick and that's it. But this one was God's choice. So no devil in hell could have changed that or moved him. And I want to advise our people, start seeking God and start praying for the nation, in particularly for the government, the administration. Pray and start condemning, because sometimes when we think we're condemning man, we are condemning God, because God is in charge. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, caller. Much appreciated. We listened to Dr. Mitchell, during the campaign, and there were many people who felt that he didn't say anything significant to really capture the voters' attention. There was no punchline. There wasn't something really significant. And some people even made fun of some of the things, where did they and those sort of things. And a lot of people felt that did not help the party whatsoever. What's your thoughts about it?
Damian captured it, Yes. Although the election was called by the NNP administration, they were the ones responding to the campaign.
That's correct.
I think the NDC machinery was much better prepared. The social media network was very well organized. There was a new sense of hope, and you said in terms of the conversations, because when you're an incumbent, you ought to be speaking on your track record. You can't be making promises. You must say what you have done. So as a new kid on the block, you can make promises, yes. Right? And there were promises. So there was an opportunity for a new group, the NDC, to share a vision for Grenada. And then utilizing social media, they were able to capture and captivate the population, something that the then incumbent was not able to do. And they were left flat-footed.
Really was. Okay, we've got a call.
Social media.
We've got a caller on the line. Caller, good evening. Thanks for holding.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, the former Prime Minister said that he has scientific information that he's going to win the election. I wanted to know where that scientific information came from. Thank you.
All right.
Let me respond to that. It's an interesting question. I trust pollsters, right? I honestly do. And well, Dr. Greaves is a social scientist, but it is a snapshot in a point in time. Yeah. We also must be aware that who pays the piper gets to decide whether the release of those results will be there. So I will share a poll that is in my favor, and I will withhold a poll that is not in my favor. But if a poll is held in March, one may reasonably say that the NNP would win. If a poll was held the second week of June, it would have said a completely different thing. And I believe that is what occurred. So the conversations of a poll saying the incumbent will be victorious, we have to ask, when was that poll conducted? Not necessarily question whether that poll was accurate.
Yeah. When was it conducted? We've got another caller in the line. Caller, good evening. Good evening, caller.
Good evening.
Yes, go ahead, please.
And kudos to your panelists. I want to say to you that in conversation with the Prime Minister, he spoke about a passion. Paul Bogle, Sinke, Fedon, Morris Bishop, Erigeri, all of these individuals spoke about a dream and a passion. And therefore, what the caller would have mentioned prior, the female caller, about the timing, it is God-inspired. And therefore, nobody could have determined what or who would have been the leader other than the person who had the dream. And I want to endorse the current Prime Minister in fulfilling his dream, because there is a need to rise up and to attend to the nation's business. And therefore, I want to endorse his appointment as the Prime Minister, because no devil in hell can determine that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. Yes.
And you know, there are a number of factors, and thank you very much, caller, for that observation, but there are a number of factors. Incumbent fatigue. You have won the election, twice in succession. You have to do something inspiring the next time around. There were several issues that were raised that were never dealt with. The pension scenario was a back and forth, and one did not get the impression that there was a clear path. And here comes this new kid on the block, as you said, who said, we will pay the election. We will pay the pension. This is what we will do. You, as the incumbent Prime Minister said, you will put a commission in place with some powerhouses in terms of economists and so on, who would look at this and make a determination. The Honorable Prime Minister now says, we will pay that pension. So there was something definitive, something exciting, something substantive, something intellectually stimulating that was put to the populace, and they decided to go for what was stimulating and what seemed to be a clear path as to what the development agenda was, rather than talking about where he did day and things of that nature, and looking at all of those things. And theatrics is always important. Dancing on the stage is important. As a politician, I used to dance on the stage. I used to climb the speakers and wave my flag. I'm a Calypsonian too, so I sang Calypso and everything and riled up the crowd. That is good. That helps. But we are into a new era of politics where the election is decided on social media.
Okay. Well, we still have quite a bit to talk about, but we need to take a quick break. Let's do that, and then we'll be right back.
If there was ever a time to keep and stay healthy, it's now. We at Hills and Valley are here to help you take deliberate steps to maintain your health. We stayed true to maintaining the most comprehensive rates while stocking the widest range of medicines and health devices, including personal protective equipment. There are so many benefits shopping with us. You get great savings through discounts for senior citizens and reward cards for loyal customers. Ask about owning yours today. Visit us at Halifax and Grenville Street, St. George, Jubilee Street opposite the Grenville Bus Terminal, and at Hillsborough, Carrico. Our wholesale distribution on Halifax Street also stocks the widest range of pharmaceuticals. We are with you on the hills and in the valleys. We are Hills and Valley Pharmacy.
Experience data on the fastest, most reliable network. Our new Christmas specials are just for you, giving you the best value. Buy and stay on any Christmas plan and get 10 gigabytes any use data on us every month for a year. That means 10 gigabytes more every month for more music, more entertainment, and more sports. It's the Christmas that keeps on giving. Available exclusively on our new Christmas plans. Hurry in store today to get your 10 gigabytes in this limited time offer. Digicel. Merry Christmas.
Gather family and friends and those you know. Shop for your season's needs and more. Celebrate this Christmas. Make your season bright. Forget your troubles, at least for a night. Get a GCCU Light Up Your Christmas loan to make your season merry and light. Purchase appliances and furniture, household goods and home repairs to give your life a little cheer. Easy application and fast approval. Terms and conditions apply. Light up your Christmas with a loan from the GCCU, Grenville Cooperative Credit Union Limited. Call 473-442-8602 or visit us at grencu.org for more information.
Whether you're shopping for hardware, building materials, and appliances, Hubbard's Building Supplies at Grandance is the place to shop. With improved facilities, increased parking, wider variety of products, and a trendy and spacious layout, catering for all your shopping needs. Why wait? Visit Hubbard's Building Supplies today. Now open Mondays to Fridays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Hubbard's. Quality service, affordable prices.
Sisson's WeatherGuard Pro. For every project, there's only one Pro.
And welcome back. Well, it was August 2022, and the big story, Anderson Peters, of course, Grenada's international javelin thrower, was in the spotlight. So there was this controversy on that Harbour Master, is it? Yes, Harbour Master boat, and where people felt that he was manhandled, treated badly, treated poorly. And that was all over social media. People came out in strong defense of Anderson Peters. Let's take this story and then we'll have a few minutes of discussion about it.
Grenadians await the outcome of a matter that has been trending since Wednesday night. 6 Trinidadian nationals who are crew members on board the Trinidad Party boat Harbour Master were taken into police custody following an altercation with Grenada's world javelin champion Anderson Peters on Wednesday night. A video circulating on social media showed multiple crew members in a violent scuffle with Peters before pushing him overboard into the waters of the Carnage and St. George. The incident reportedly occurred after Peters attended a boat ride on the Harbour Master. Social media outrage promptly started after the incident, with some citizens calling on Grenadians to boycott the Harbour Master.
The anticipated gathering outside the St. George's Magistrate Court on Monday was absent. However, media personality Troy Garvey made his presence felt.
Criminals, thugs, criminals, justice for Anderson.
55-year-old John Alexander, 35-year-old Mikhail John, 42-year-old Noel Cooper, and 28-year-old Shion Jack pleaded guilty to the charges of causing grievous harm to Anderson Peters and causing harm to his brother Keydon Peters on Wednesday, 10th August 2022. The 4 Trinidadian nationals were presented before Magistrate Terry St. Louis and remanded. The location where the 4 Trinidadian will await their sentencing on Wednesday is not being disclosed publicly. This decision was taken in the interest of their safety.
Attorney-at-Law Derek Sylvester has moved to seize the vessel at the center of an altercation that is grabbing local, regional, and international headlines. The law firm of Derek F. Sylvester and Associates on Friday applied to the Supreme Court of Grenada to serve a warrant of arrest on the Harbour Master, the boat on which an altercation involving Anderson Peters occurred Wednesday night.
The ship Harbour Master, registered in Trinidad and Tobago, departed from Grenada on Wednesday, September 7, 2022. The ship came to Grenada for Carnival festivities in August 2022. However, it was arrested in Grenada when some of its crew inflicted harm and grievous harm on Grenadian World Javelin champion Anderson Peters and his brother Keaton Peters on August 10th. Those crew members were charged and pleaded guilty at the St. George's Magistrates Court for their offences. The arrest of the ship was related to civil proceedings brought by the Peters brothers in the High Court of Grenada against the owners of the ship regarding the said harm and grievous harm. Attorney-at-law representing the Peters brothers in the civil matter, Derek Sylvester, says constructive, cordial, and focused professional legal talks between the two teams of lawyers produced a mutually satisfactory conclusion to this stage of the matter. Cajetan Hood, one of the lawyers representing the Harbour Master, revealed the grounds in which the boat was released.
The boat has been released from the judicial arrest, right, on the basis that the insurers have set out letters saying that the boat is insured in excess of that. So in other words, if at all there are damages that are awarded, then lawyers on behalf of the Peters may levy against the insurance company based on the value of the insurance. So that's the situation right now.
Superintendent, by and large, people were outraged.
Definite outrage. They're definite outrage. And while, Anderson Peters is Grenadian, as law enforcement, we try to stay above the fray in terms of sites. And, we were criticized a lot the way we protected the Trinidadians while they were in our custody, because we cannot allow the outrage of the public to cause us to allow harm to come to them while they're in our custody. So it doesn't matter where you come from. Once you commit a crime in Grenada, you're entitled to the same treatment as a Grenadian while you're in Grenada. And we have a duty to protect you. So we did that. But, as Grenadians, we all felt the outrage. I know there are a lot of police officers who also felt, the unfairness of the process in terms of having foreigners, if you can refer to them as that, inflicting the kind of harm that we've seen inflicted on him. And Grenadians allow the voices to be heard. They let us know how they felt about the entire situation. But at the end of the day, we have to balance how we feel as citizens and the work that we're being paid to do and the impartiality that we're expected. And not only in the Anderson case, but in all of the cases that I know we investigated, we do what we needed to do. We've gotten a lot of criticism from the media sometimes, the way when these defendants are taken to court, how we pass them in the back door and we pass them here and there. Not that we're trying to protect, but we have a fundamental responsibility to ensure their safety while they're in our custody. We're not trying to shield them from the media getting a photograph, but we want to ensure that nothing untoward happened to them while we are responsible for them. And we do that not only to foreigners, we do that to all criminals who are in our custody. We have a fundamental duty and responsibility to ensure your safety while you're in our custody.
And I'm sure that Grenadians would like the same to happen to
wherever you go.
Grenadians, wherever you are, given the kind of respect. Colin?
Yeah. Well, Anderson Peters is a hero. So I am biased. I do appreciate Superintendent Curwen's position, and I applaud that. And it is the responsibility of the RGPF to protect anyone who is in their care. As a Grenadian, Anderson Peters is my hero. He doesn't get manhandled. I'll be upset. I was upset. I continue to be upset. The good thing about this is that they pled guilty. They pled guilty immediately, which was taking responsibility so we could have gotten past this. One of the key things I also noted, though, and I imagine that the civil matter is still ongoing, so I don't know where that one is. But sometimes we need to be mindful as Grenadians to say less in order for us to protect our heroes. And I say that a lot of the discussions taking place on social media even started going into things of the possibilities of his injuries, right? You don't want to make public, if he was injured, the type of injury that he had. You don't want to give his competition any upper hand, and literally saying hand here as he's a javelin thrower, on him, and be able to exploit that at a later stage. You don't want potential sponsors to believe that he is damaged goods and therefore compromise his earning capacity. And I think, sometimes when our raw emotions were getting out there, we were probably saying too much, because the likes of, I don't want to call a wrong sponsor, but whether it is any sponsor, whether it's the Adidas or the Nike or Puma or others, they too will be paying attention to know whether this back-to-back world champion can live up to the potential he has been exhibiting and the types of performances that he has been having. If he was so badly beaten and damaged elbow, etc., that's some of the things that were making the rounds. I mean, we may want to recall when Curwen was ill, there was very little information shared until there was a resolution and a pathway forward. That was not coincidental in my view. I believe it was deliberate. And similarly, I would advise, when it comes to our professional athletes, while we have that passion, we be mindful that our commitment to them might actually be compromising them if we say too much, and we need to protect them in that vein. So, I mean, that was, just my thoughts. I was biased. Is Anderson Peters. He is world champion. You don't touch it. Yeah. Period. That's my stance. But I was happy that we were able to get past it by an early plea.
And my take on this is that, again, there are lessons to be learned. And I hope that we learn lessons from it in terms of how we treat with situations like this. Here's an iconic individual who has brought tremendous popularity, tremendous fame to Grenada, found himself in an altercation. How do we proceed in situations like that? Because they will happen again. It will happen again with other athletes, perhaps. Is there something we need to do in terms of the psychological side of things in terms of athletes, to try not to have something like that escalate, to have it de-escalated, because it can affect you as an athlete. It could affect your earnings, as Colin said. It could affect how people see you. It could affect the country. When our athletes reach that stage where they become masterful in terms of the sports, what kinds of programs do we put in place to deal with those issues? Here's a situation. We have brilliant cricketers and brilliant footballers. They are very skillful. We teach them their art and so on. It's part of the whole business, part of the whole program, your public relations, how you deal with the public and so on. And how do you speak? When somebody comes and you have this feat, and somebody comes and they place it, and a journalist places a mic before you and says, so how do you feel about this? Are they taught how to handle those situations, how to handle those situations that perhaps spin out of their control? I think that is what we need to start to look at in terms of those dimensions, because often those dimensions are not given the attention that they ought to be given.
But there's a critical point that I want to make here based on what Colin has said, because we did not only see that in this particular matter. Our newfound social media freedom is affecting us tremendously. Yeah. When something happened in Grenada, be it an accident, be it a murder, be it a crime, social media is blown up with everybody having an opinion. Now that prejudices the investigation. It prejudices the minds of the people who are involved, and undue damage in most cases are done. Now, it's okay, we have our constitutional rights and freedom to speak, but let us speak about the things that we know about as a fact. People create their own stories. People express their opinion far away from the scene, but they can tell you every single iota of evidence that is available. And that is damaging, it is destroying, it is affecting investigation, it plays with the minds of people, not only those involved in the incident, but the family as well. Imagine something happened to your loved one and you're reading on social media what wasn't happened to them. Far from the truth. I mean, sometimes I'm glad I'm a police officer and holds the position that I do, because when you know the facts
and you're reading on social media something out of minds. It's like, what are we doing to our nation? What are we doing to our people? What messages are we sending when we just go on social media and say anything we want, because we have that freedom to do that? So I think as a people, we need to be more responsible. So I think that's a critical point that Colin made.
Yeah. But I think apart from the responsibility, and you're correct, is there an alert system where you can prevent some of this disinformation and misinformation from going out?
It's going to be.
Is there a way in which our providers, the science, the technology, can find a way to sort of sift those things or sort of try to deal with those things before they get out there? Because that is part of the difficulty. People are condemned in the public court before it goes to the legal system, and that is part of the situation we have to deal with. That's a whole new dimension that we need to talk about.
Looking at the time on the wall, we don't have much time remaining, and we got our last. We're going to be talking now pension payout, and that was a big story, November 2022. And in fact, the now present Prime Minister did say that about this time we should have pension paid out or started to be paid out, and he kept his word. So let's get this clip, and that's going to be our last topic that we will look at tonight.
During his national address on Tuesday night, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell reiterated that government has taken the decision to not appeal the recent pension ruling, despite strong legal advice that there are good enough grounds for an appeal. However, the Prime Minister added that not appealing the judgment means that government will have to pay out millions of dollars to public servants, which, if not managed strategically, can completely derail the country's economy.
Regarding the issue of payment of state pensions, unless we manage the process well and set out a viable roadmap under which the state could meet its obligations, it can completely derail the economy, sink thousands into dire poverty.
She said, when I see that figure, she said, you're happy for life. And I want to thank the Prime Minister because he didn't have to do it. I work with him. But I want to thank you that today I am here and I feel happy in my spirit. Very happy. Thank you, thank all of you.
That was an emotional thank you by senior pensioner Bernadette Jeremiah, a former health officer, thanking the government of Grenada. Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell handed her retroactive pension payment at a press conference on Wednesday afternoon. Ms. Jeremiah is among the over 500 Grenadians that are eligible to receive their pension payment in the month of November. The Prime Minister told Grenadians in July that the data coming out from the Ministry of Finance is that the retroactive payment is going to be in the region of EC $60 million. However, this has moved up to $75 million.
Now, this is no small feat. The transfer of $44 million from the state to the citizens, and eventually the projections is that as much as $75 million will be transferred from the state to the citizens, is perhaps the single largest transfer of wealth from the government to the citizens in the history of Grenada's post-independence. And so we have to appreciate that it is not just a symbolic gesture, but we are talking here fundamentally about the well-being of our citizens. If people work for 30, 40 years to build the state of Grenada, and we let them retire into poverty, it is the state of Grenada that we are doing a service.
Yes, so, there is a biblical story where some spies went to look at Jericho as to whether there was a possibility of the Israelites getting in there and dominating the land. So 10 of them said, we're not able. And then there were 2 guys who said, that's Caleb and Joshua, who said, look, Moses, we're well able. And if I'm going to make the necessary application, I'm sure that Deacon Mitchell was saying, we're well able, and the former Prime Minister saying, this is going to put us into dire poverty. Now, we don't have much time on this. We just got about 4 or 5 minutes to talk about this, but let's just have a quick discussion about it. Dr. Greaves.
Promise fulfilled. Promise fulfilled. People are receiving their pensions. And what I like about this move is basically you're doing it at this time, Christmas time. People will have some spending power. But it's also going to have the economic spin-off or benefit for the country.
Is this going to push Grenada into abject poverty?
I don't see how it can do that. I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe Colin can answer that. But I don't see how it can push people into poverty when, in fact, it offers what they call in St. Lucia Creole terms, and you might know it, a soulagement, which means a relief. A sort of relief for people, psychologically, economically, financially, emotionally, because these were people that were looking for this. But the important point is that it will have an economic benefit and spin-off for the country at large.
I would go in 1983 with the Pension Disqualification Act. It did not mean, my mother was a public officer all her life, and I know you served in the public sector as well. It did not mean that public officers should be less well off. That was never the intention of the Pension Disqualification Act and the creation of the NIS. It was actually for private sector employees to now earn a pension, which they were not getting before, right? And the clause was always there for equity to be reestablished. It took us from 1983 to now to deliver, despite the number of court cases, etc.
Yeah.
So it is a good move. It is good for those who will benefit. It will be good for everyone, really. And the Prime Minister mentioned it. A public officer giving 40 plus years of their lives to retire into poverty is unfair, is unjust, is unconscionable. And it took too long to deliver and make good on what should have always been the case and intention from 1983 to now.
Yeah. Well, Superintendent, you're a civilian, so you have all rights to comment on this.
All I want to say on this is that it provides me an opportunity to retire with some dignity. That is all I wish to say on this. Because prior to the pronouncement that the pension is going to be paid, means that I would have to make 60 years and would not have gotten a state pension. I was only entitled to an NIS pension at the age of 60. But by now we know from everybody else who have gone before that you cannot live on that. It was just insufficient. So the dignity of knowing that I can retire and get my state gratuity and pension, and hopefully an additional NIS pension, is enough for me to make out my twilight years in peace.
So when that time comes, can I lime around you?
Well, what I was going to do, and let me just signal, is then now financial management becomes important, because all money could done.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And the gratuity was meant to clear debts, right? And as well as for those who have some investment ideas, sound investment. But financial management and financial literacy is critically important. Absolutely. Because this transfer of wealth, this largest transfer of wealth to the Grenadian society, may not end up in the hands of those who should be beneficiaries if it's not managed properly.
And then there's the other side of the coin. Management of it is one thing. Safety and security of it is also another issue. And from law enforcement, we have been echoing the sentiments of the day that whatever pension and gratuity you get, you better ensure that you have it in a safe place and do not allow it to attract undesirables who may want to, depose you of it. So that too is a critical component. It's better to get your money and people doesn't have to know who benefits, so that you do not allow yourself to become a target of criminals. Yeah, so that too, with the point that Colin make about management, is also important.
No new cousins, right? No new cousins, no new people who have all of a sudden have bright business ideas. Stay clear. Stay clear.
Thank you so very much, gentlemen. Dr. Greaves, we want to thank you so much for appearing. You're such a great resource person. And Superintendent, we appreciate you so very much. And we just want to let our viewers and listeners know that Colin, of course, is going to be on in the early part of next year, and he's going to be hosting Beyond the Headlines. I'll be out for some time, and well, you know, the future lies unseen ahead. It holds, I know not what, but this I know, I need not dread, for Jesus faileth not. Wonderful. to thank all the callers who called in and gave their contribution. We appreciate that so very much. We want to wish everybody a wonderful Christmas, those of you who do celebrate Christmas, and we look forward to a great and wonderful 2023. We thank God for bringing us through 2022. We had quite a bit of challenges, but you know what? We've made it thus far. God bless. Until then, Stephenson, Worme, signing out.
Let's mingle and jingle.
You mean jingle and mingle, right?
Does it really matter? Mingle and Jingle, the mid-morning program that will drive the Christmas season. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on